So about 2 years before COVID happened, I made a slideshow with a bunch of predictions about future events. And one of those was that there would be a super flu coming from China and that a lot of people would die. I think trying to project myself into the shoes of someone watching that presentation several years ago, I think that I would conclude that that person is crazy for predicting so many things that seem so outlandish, things that you would not hear in other places. It's interesting to think, in my background, I've worked with modeling and machine learning and artificial intelligence. And one of the things that denotes value in a model is it's not just how well can that model replicate an expert's opinion. It's how often does the model correctly predict something that disagrees with the consensus, the expert opinion, the public opinion. Looking back on that slideshow, if you were to watch it and then compare it to news headlines since then, an honest person would conclude that there was an awful lot in that nobody was saying, and most people would assume was crazy. And now a lot of those things have happened in surprising ways for most. The other day I saw a headline, I've got it pulled up here on my computer, and it says half of Americans anticipate a US civil war soon, survey finds. This is not a fringe article. It wasn't a fringe weird survey. This is in science.org, and the survey's peer-reviewed from what I understand. Yeah, it's a preprint, so it's going through the peer review process, but this is mainstream sociologists, yada yada. So half of Americans anticipate a US civil war soon. And so I've spoken a lot about this idea of civil war, and I've made some statements about, for years and years, I've said this is coming. And for some time now, I've said we're already there. We're in a civil war already. And what the sides are and what the attacks look like, I mean, this would be a very long video to lay all that out. But the fact is that we live in a society that's got at least two tiers in the so-called justice system. We don't, as a society, we don't enforce most laws. We have a ton of laws on the books that should not be there. They're ridiculous. They make everyone a criminal. And it's just a matter of time before, if anyone wanted to come after you, they'd have plenty of reasons to do so on the books already. And the mechanisms are already there to put you away, and you wouldn't really have recourse for it. And, you know, that's just the judicial system. The fact is that so many foundations in our society are gone, and we're just sort of riding on fumes. And most people, they're in the fumes and they're saying, well, things aren't that bad because look, you know, I still live in a house and I still have a car and I still have a job and my kids are still going to school. Well, all of those things are fundamentally different than they were 20 years ago. They're so different that if you went in a time machine and you kidnapped someone from 20 years ago and you brought them here, they would lose their minds because they're so different. They'd go back in time and they'd be a nutcase like Sarah Connor prepping for Armageddon. That's how drastic things are. And if you're honest, you have to honestly admit that. But we have our heads so far in the sand denying these things, right? Anyway, I could rant about that for a while. It's not actually why I wanted to make this video. I wanted to tell you that one of the things that I've been saying for a long time is, and I think it's really important to think about, is that the Lord is not happy with the first world. And we have had so much wealth, so much opportunity to do good, and yet we are an absolutely corrupt, I use a phrase that was used against me not too long ago, morally bankrupt. We are a morally bankrupt society. We have turned completely from God. And there's not too much further we can go with that. There's a reason he's preserved us until now, but that is not going to last forever. What it comes down to is that there are certain things that need to happen that can only happen in the current environment. But once those things happen, so to say that society is hanging by a thread is giving too much credit for how tenuous thing. It's not drastic enough. I don't know a phrase. There's a huge sword hanging over our heads, and it's too far gone to prevent that from dropping. And the only thing that's keeping the sword has nothing to do with the public. That's how bad it is. We're not being preserved for the sake of the public. We're being preserved for the sake of a few people doing what they need to do before the end comes. And I shouldn't say the end. I should say the end of this, the end of the first world way of life, because it's going to end. And if you're alive today, you're probably going to see it. How much of it you see depends on how long you survive. But that's what's coming. And so I wanted to reiterate things I've said before in this context, so hopefully this is like a little more real for you. There is going to be a famine, and a lot of people are going to die. There's going to be another pandemic, and a lot of people are going to die. There's going to be civil unrest, and a lot of people are going to die. And after all of that, the United States will be invaded, and a lot of people are going to die. And I'm telling you, all of these things are going to happen, and I know they're going to happen. I could give you a whole bunch of reasons that have to do with things that God has shown me and told me, and I don't think that would be very persuasive because people just think I'm crazy, and if they haven't had those sorts of experiences with God, it's a super weird thing to hear. I could give you a very, very long argument that has nothing to do with religion. That requires going into some sophisticated topics. It's not something you can do in 30 seconds. And what you will see, and you have seen, if your eyes are open, you're going to see secular experts coming around to these same conclusions and sharing with you those non-religious reasons. You're going to see this coming. And I've asked God, is it my place to explain these things? Because I could. But because I'm so busy, I'd have to take away from other things. And he said, no. There's a time and a place for me to sort of lay these things out. And there's a way I need to do that. But other people are going to do what they do, and it's their job. And you can go look at YouTube videos and podcasts of these experts coming out and explaining these things. And it's out there for you to see if you care to see it, or you can just bury your head in the sand. But the information is coming out, and it's coming like a tsunami, where people think of a tsunami like one big wave. But go watch a video of a tsunami and how it happens. There's some ebb and some flow, but over time, it's just the water level keeps going up and up and up, and it just doesn't stop, right? And eventually it causes big problems. So that's how the information is coming, and you can see these things if you go look for them. But the famine, the disease, the civil unrest, the war, those things are also like a tsunami. The information's like that. The things are like that. And what that means is it might be one thing, but it's probably not going to be one thing. It's going to be a complicated thing that ebbs and flows, but it just keeps going higher. Maybe I could do this, something like that, right? Like a stock chart with an upward trend. And the upward trend is going to be what we call super linear. It's not going to be a line. I can't curve my arm because I have bones, but something approaching exponential. And you're going to see it. And so, I see experts coming out now and saying millions of people are going to die from a famine. Yeah, I've been telling you that for years. And here it is. It's going to start this fall. And pestilence, so disease, COVID happened, right? And some of us knew it was going to happen. Something worse than COVID is going to happen, and I do just want to take a second and tell you about that. There is going to be a disease, and I don't know how much of the world it will affect, but I do know that it will be in the United States. And it's not going to be like COVID. It's going to be very, very dangerous. It will be so dangerous that people will opt to stay in their homes even if they don't have food and even if they don't have water. They're going to voluntarily stay at home. And I don't mean like COVID lockdowns where, people are going to the hairdresser secretly or whatever. You will barricade yourself in your house and you will not leave, because that's how likely it will be that you will die if you come into contact with other people who are infected. That is going to happen in the US, and it will necessarily bring everything that you know about normal life to an absolute halt. So I'm not saying this. So whenever you come out and you say these things, oh, you're scaremongering. Look, it's going to happen whether you're scared or not. It's going to happen whether you believe or not. I told you we were going to get a super flu from China. People ridiculed me left and right. I was still on Facebook at the time. There were people who lost their minds. They're just saying all kinds of crazy things to me on Facebook and about me. And it happened. It doesn't matter, right? Now, the funny thing is like, you can say these things. You have no intent on scaring people. I don't benefit if you're scared about something. God tells us things ahead of time so we have time to prepare ourselves. Not so that we're scared, but precisely so we're not scared when it happens, right? You get all this lead time to prepare. If someone said to you, look, in 3 years, a big weight is going to drop on your shoulders, literally, right? This is just a contrived thing. Or let's make it more real. In 3 years, your toddler is going to be in a room with you in a dresser. A heavy thing is going to fall on them. So you're weak now, but you have 3 years to lift weights. And if you do that, it's a lot of work. But if you do that in 3 years, you can save your toddler and it won't get crushed. That's what it's like. When God tells us things ahead of time, is so we can prepare ourselves. And sometimes that's not so much about preventing consequences, although sometimes it is. A lot of times it's just so that we know that He's in control. If He tells you something's going to happen before it does, it means He knows what's going to come after it, right? He knows it. He knows all these things, and He has the ability to take us through them if we trust Him. And that's the problem. The problem is not people telling us these things before they happen, and we accuse them of all sorts of crazy things. The problem is that we don't trust God. And I shouldn't say we, because I do trust Him. I trust Him completely. But we all need to trust Him completely. And when we do, He can use these things to navigate us towards what we would not encounter otherwise. He loves us. He loves us more than we love ourselves. He loves us so much. But He can't guide us to the good things He has prepared for us beyond our willingness to trust Him. So these things are going to happen. And the point isn't whether you live or die. The point isn't even if it's hard or easy. It's not going to be easy for anybody. The point is, get your life in a place where when bad things happen, you can turn to God and say something like the following: Lord, I have done everything in my life according to my understanding of your will. I trust that whatever happens now is accordant with your word, where you said that all things that happen to those that love you are for their benefit. And I trust you in this, just like I've trusted you in everything else. and let it be according to your will. And Lord, if there's some way that you can use me in all of this to help other people, please do. Guide me to that and give me the opportunity to give of myself for the benefit of other people. That's the point. And if you can get your heart in that place, then all of these things will be for your benefit. And I'm telling you, as horrific as the future seems when you start to understand what's coming our way, and as horrific as the present is when you understand where we actually are, there is an equal and opposite. It's not equal. There's an opposite that's greater than all of that, which is the goodness that God wants so badly to inject into your life. You just have to give him space to do it. So these things are going to happen. And when they happen, I hope that the fact that you were told about them before they happen increase your trust in God. He's real. He's real. He lives. He speaks to people. He comes to people. There's a conversation. He's real. He wants to be as intimate with you as you could be with any person. He wants you to know him better than you know yourself. And that can happen. And there's nothing better than that. But you have to orient your life in a certain way and go through certain experiences that are really hard to get to that point. And all of the things in the end times, it's all for that purpose, to give the grist for the mill, to give you the environment where you can go through these experiences and come to know him. So I hope you think about that. I hope it benefits you. And it's not, I just made a video about Luke 12. It's not about hoarding and prepping. I've said this before. I'll say it again and again. It's not about what you have. It's about what you did and why you did it. No amount of any kind of temporal preparations will result in you having an easier go of it when the stuff hits the fan. But as the stuff hits the fan, and you run out of whatever it is you've stockpiled, or you find yourself having to leave this wonderful property that you've built up for whatever, right? When those things happen, and they will happen, you can turn to God and you can say, God, you taught me these chunks of information about what to expect. I did these things. I was faithful. I responded reasonably to what you showed me. And now I have nothing, and I'm in your hands. See, we're always in his hands. But the goods, the preparation, the things we learn, it's all just for two reasons. One is to be in a place where we can invoke his justice, and that results as a blessing to us, not a bad thing. And two, so that we can make it a little easier for others who maybe haven't had the opportunity to prepare themselves in their minds and their hearts like we have. And that's the point. Anyway, I've said too much here. Probably, I know I've ranted, this hasn't been organized. I'm just giving it to you as it is in here. So, but I hope this is helpful.